I knew I either wanted to be an architect or an attorney. And
you did?
I was that kid who came out of the womb in khakis with a Ronald Reagan lunchbox, right? I knew exactly what I wanted to be. The only thing I didn't do, which I had planned to, was go in the military.
Really? Okay.
I had planned on stopping off there and then getting into either law or architecture. And so I've always kind of had a path, and I think, frankly, I'm more fun now than I was when I was a kid. My father was a pharmaceutical salesman back when it was fun. You could actually take doctors on trips and do cool stuff.
Yeah.
And but I remember my father would at least every 2 years be sitting by the phone waiting to figure out whether he still had a job. They just had these corporate purges. And he always told my brother and me, he says, you guys need to get a profession, because if you're always working for somebody, they can fire you at any time they want to. So
Wow.
He was good. He made it to retirement. But I remember the stress that he would have just, working with a big corporate sales, big corporation, publicly traded.
Yep.
And so my brother is a pharmacist, and I'm an attorney. So we did what Dad told us to.
No.
They were great. The first of their generation to go to college.
That's awesome.
My grandfather refused to help my dad go to college, and this is during Vietnam, right? So Daddy he joined the Air Force. He did. He served in the military, and then when they got out, he went to college. My mom put him through. They had dated all through high school.
Okay.
And she put him through college, and then when he finished up college, they just swapped roles. She went and finished. So they both first in their family go to college. My mother was a biology teacher, and my dad was a pharmaceutical salesman. I loved wrestling, so I wrestled from like fourth grade through the end of the high school.
Okay.
But then I was also played percussion, so I was in band. And
Okay.
So I was that kind of weird kid who straddled the line. I'd hang out with the jocks a little bit, and I'd hang out with the band guys. But I still play percussion. I still have really nice drum set. I've also picked up the bass guitar recently, so I've been having a good time with that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you can now. Do you have in a band or no?
I'm not.
Okay.
Carrie Singley with the club keeps asking me to show up, but I always have zoning hearings that he wants me to have practice. It was interesting. There was a bit of a detour that I took. I had this idea I was going to do biomedical engineering, and so this is my senior year of high school when you start really thinking about, wow, this is for real, and I got to go make some decisions. So I went in as a chemistry major. My brother was a chemistry major, and I thought, well, Matt did it, so might as well do it.
Yeah.
I did okay, but I hated it. I just couldn't think of. So I ended up going back, got a business degree, and I had this professor, and she was awesome. Interestingly, she was actually the women's Olympic softball coach. Their team practiced out of Chattanooga, and she was my business law professor. And of course, I was that guy in class who's always raising his hand and stopping the class to ask questions. Well, my classmates didn't like that, but the professor really did. And so she said, "You ever thought about going to law school? Because obviously you're briefing cases, you're figuring this thing out." I said, that's kind of what I had planned to do anyway. So she said, let me help you out. So she gave me some advice about applying for law school. Started studying for the LSAT, and so got into UT Knoxville.
Okay.
Went that direction. Was fortunate. I always tell people this, not to be pretentious, but I stayed in law school for 4 years. And the reason I tell people I got my MBA was not because I'm bragging about having an MBA. I just want to explain why it took me 4 years to get my law degree. But no, Knoxville was great. And but then when it came time to get a gig, a full-time job, I had an offer in Georgia, and I had one in Murfreesboro. And I kid you not, I chose it to go to Georgia because it's closer to where we hunt. So we moved down here, and that's where I got my job. Probably shouldn't say this in a public forum, but I didn't do great on the LSAT. It was, but I only took it once. I mean, I don't know if they felt sorry for me and said, "Hey, this dude had a bad day." But I had a really good GPA in undergrad, and so I got into UT, and I ended up taking a business transactions concentration.
Okay.
So it was stuff like mergers and acquisitions, real estate deals, and got top of the class in that, which was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the LSAT was not my best day. You don't. And so I am a zoning attorney, which is a weird practice. A lot of folks will say they will do zoning work, but the people who are really in this day in, day out, there's maybe 50 in the state that really understand the political side of it, and if they have to litigate, they can. But I remember my first year, and you're doing tort law, and I'm sitting there reading cases, and I thought, oh my word, is this what I'm going to have to do for the rest of my life? I just had this existential moment. I'm like, I don't know that I can do this. I just didn't want to go chase ambulances. And
Right.
You know what? There's good folks in that practice, and they do a good job for their clients, but that was just not something that excited me.
Yep.
But then, like most things, law school is a lot like your undergraduate. You start taking classes and you see what really you enjoy and what you got a passion for.
Okay.
I loved property. I loved contracts. I loved land use. But I remember thinking, how in the world do I get a job doing that? Because listen to my accent, right? I'm not going to fit in real well in a lot of big cities. But I'm like, you got to go to Chicago or Boston to do this stuff for a living. And I thought I was going to be a corporate attorney, and my first job, I actually got hired to do corporate work, forming businesses, micro deals, those kind of things. But it just so turned out that the firm I was at did most of the zoning work in Forsyth County, and it was such a boom time. This was 2003.
Okay.
That they worked in no other jurisdiction. They only did zonings in Forsyth County, and this was a time they'd file between 20 and 40 a month. I think our record was going till 3 a.m. to a hearing, and it was really hard to understand in retrospect, but that was a crazy time between 2003 and 2008.
Like a pseudo gold rush.
It really was.
Yeah.
And so we were just plenty of work. Well, come 2007, the brakes start getting pumped, and in 2008, if you could find 3 to 4 hours of work a day, you were lucky. So the zoning dried up.
Yeah.
And then people were looking for jobs. You had a bunch of folks that had been moving at that time.
Yeah.
Interesting, and I'll give you a little Rotary aside. I had joined a Rotary club. I was 29 when I had joined, so I think this was around 2006. Yeah. And maybe it was 2007. But at that time, it was a Rotary club in Forsyth County, and it was the young guys club, right?
Really?
We're all broke, but everybody's got lots of time and can volunteer. So we had a lot of friendships that were formed, working on philanthropic endeavors, but we just were not in a part of our career where we could cut a check.
Right.
And so then when the crash happened in 2008, so many guys just ended up going separate ways just because you were looking for work to find anything that you could get. So, but what I did to survive is I started litigating property tax appeals. I had learned to do a little bit of that, but again, it was kind of a niche market, and it was one of the few things people would pay you for. It's like, hey, it's pure contingency. If I can save you money, I'll pay you, or I get paid. If I can't, but for better or worse, property taxes or property valuations were just falling. So we could hit a few homers and paid the bills.
Yeah.
So that's what I did probably from almost exclusively from 2008 until 10.
Okay.
Then we start working for banks, because banks have now taken back property, and they say, what have I got? They had no idea what they were entitled to do, what it was zoned to do. So we start consulting with banks. And then finally, I don't know what happened in 2013, someone flipped the switch and decided it was time to let the economy go again. And so then I guess since 13, I've done almost exclusively land use and zoning work. It was interesting. I had taken a job with a real estate firm. It was a big closing shop in Atlanta.
Okay.
And put a property in Canton under contract. Was gonna close on that, but they needed proof of employment. So I reached out and asked for proof of employment. Long story short is the salary we had negotiated. They send me a form that says it's half of what we had agreed to, and I said, well, I can't take the job because of that. So, So 2 weeks before the bar, I just said, don't have a job. So I went ahead and took the bar. And so then you're in kind of panic mode. But I took the Tennessee and the Georgia bar on the same weekend. And then I played PlayStation for a week. It was a PlayStation 2, by the way. So we're talking, I'm dating myself. But then I just start sending letters out. And I I'm looking in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll take more bars. I've already taken 2, so we'll figure it out. And I got, well, this was talking about divine providence. I really do believe God looks out for you. But I remember getting frustrated, and I'm just sending letters out, and nobody's responding. And I remember dropping a letter in my yard that I was going to put in the mailbox. And just, this is the kind of dumb things that go through your mind, right? You look at it and you look at that firm and say, that's the same name of my 5th grade teacher. I couldn't stand her, right? And I'm thinking, I'm going to throw it in the trash, right? And I said, well, no, that's a dumb thing to do. So I walked back to the mailbox and put it in the mailbox. 3 weeks later, that was one of the firms that called me up and asked for an interview. So it's just, so you really do think about, listening to that voice in the back of your head, like, just keep driving on. So that was a rough time. So we've got 4 children.
Okay.
My oldest was born right before I started law school. So I went through law school with a son.
Yeah.
My wife deserves most of the credit for that. So she was my sugar mama, right? She was a teacher in Knoxville and was paying the bills. So we were living on her salary and then my student loans.
Yeah.
And we were living in a single wide behind a used car dealer. I mean, it's a classic Tennessee story, right? So in any case, our daughter, we had our oldest daughter, who's now 23. But we were really surprised she was born. She had Down syndrome. We had no idea.
That's right, yeah.
So big surprise then.
Yeah.
Within 3 months, she ended up having to have open heart surgery up in Cincinnati.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of kids with Down syndrome have heart defects, right? So we learned about all this stuff.
Okay.
So she had surgery. We're finishing up school. Then we find out that she's got leukemia. So that was a rough year. And,
oh my gosh!
And so this is all when we're starting. So anyway, I get hired by this firm in Cumming, who were so good to us. And that first year, it was just a grind. We ended up having to send my son to live with his grandparents in Chattanooga. My wife was living down at Scottish Rite.
Yeah.
And then I was up here, and I would drive down to the hospital every night, spend an hour and a half, 2 hours to come home. So, but that employer was so good to me and worked with me. And I mean, we were a liability, right? When you come in.
You're right.
But we survived that season, but that was a rough first year.
Oh my gosh.
But they saw potential in me, and they got me working, and so they ended up, as I was saying, that the zoning boom was so big at that time. They said, well, hey, we've either got to hire somebody else, or if you want to move over from the business section over here to the land use section, come on. I said, well, I've always enjoyed that.
So, right.
Got into that, thrived, and it's been a great career. Social media.
Really?
That's been a huge change. When we started, social media really didn't pick up and get into the land use realm until 2011, 2013. So what happens with zoning, a lot of it's lobbying. I mean, it is, do you have legal remedies that you can seek against a government? Yes. It's so expensive and time consuming to litigate against a government. And you just don't want to do that. You got to have a lot at stake, and they have to have done something pretty bad. But the law is, frankly, local governments have a lot of latitude in their decision making, right?
Yeah.
So you're better off to say, okay, can we convince the local officials that this is the best project for this area? But you always had to have public notice, and so you would go and send letters to the neighbors. You'd knock on doors. You'd try to get them to meet, and they were what I thought or saw in those early days is people were much more willing to meet with you. But then once social media came around, you've got neighbors that are talking to each other via social media, and then a lot of times they just try to box out applicants. So the oddest part is you do everything you can to try to meet with neighbors, but you might have a surprise when you get to those public hearings because you've got some folks that have not met with you, and then you end up having to postpone and work with them. But we always get a lot more done if we can meet with neighbors, try to address their concerns. Sometimes we reach an agreement, sometimes we don't, but at least if we talk. But I would say with social media, a lot of folks just stop talking to you. A friend of mine who still has some of my retirement accounts, is he called me up and he's like, "Hey, Ethan, there's this really great organization you need to get involved with." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." His name's Neil Moore, and we're still buddies today. And but he just invited me. He said, "A lot of young new business guys, we're getting together. Love to have you join us." And so it was a breakfast meeting at one of the Forsyth County clubs, and went to that. And it was just dynamic, and it was kind of silly stuff. I remember one of the guys there, who's now a state representative, when he comes out in full costume, wearing a cowboy hat and a plastic gun, doing a skit with somebody just to illustrate a point and try.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, so this is the old stuffy clubs that I remember going to visit in high school, but they always made it fun, and so. One of the things I've had some folks tell me before is that the 3 T's of Rotary is either time, treasure, and talent. Mm-hmm. And there's times in your life when you've got more of one than the other. Yeah. And at that time, I had a lot more time, and so I got hanging out with a lot of folks my age, and just we learned about each other's business. The thing I've always liked about Rotary too is doing business with other Rotarians. Yeah. One, you're helping out somebody, and frankly, you trust them. You know that you can trust their integrity and their principles. Maybe it's not always the least expensive person that you could find out in the market, but if it's somebody that you say, "Hey, this is a good person, and I want to help them grow their business because I know they're looking out for me," that was another reason I thought that Rotary is a great network to have. I'll be honest, I don't know that I ever have. I have just enjoyed the relationships. I have not had that, and shame on me. I've never done an international trip. I think that's one of those things that people say. Those are when you really see that. Yep. And I have resolved I want to get that done. Because I want to have that Rotary moment. But I still see so much value in the organization, and am impressed with how much money can be raised for causes people are passionate about. I actually like to learn about new ones. Like, for example, just maybe 2-3 weeks ago, a gentleman who is a Rotarian from Idaho knew somebody in the club from a Rotary International conference, and he said, "Hey, we do this thing called Shark Pond, which is like Shark Tank, right? But you're hearing sales pitches from people in Africa who they need $1,000 loan to help them grow their business, and most people, particularly, I'm almost 50 years old, right? You get to a point in your career where $1,000 check, you're fortunate enough to be able to stroke that pretty easily, right? But that's these people's yearly salary.
I know, crazy.
And I thought this was brilliant because this guy's like, I love seeing people grow businesses and be able to take care of themselves, and he's saying, you know what? It would be really hard to do that in the U.S., but for a little bit of money, we could help people in Africa get just such a start that they can take care of their families and employ other folks and take care of their families. I mean, truly, I feel that when people have no economic hope, that's when wars start. Yeah. So if you're trying to help people grow a business and see how they can take care of their families and grow economically, that's one of the greatest vehicles for peace that we can possibly have. And this guy, just for a very small amount, he's recruiting clubs in the U.S. to sponsor businesses in Africa that's going to give them so much hope. And so just a little bit of money goes so far. So that was fascinating. That happened very recently. But we've got other folks that we work with, and I have enjoyed giving to the Rotary Foundation because, sometimes I say, I don't really know the best place to put my money. Here you go, guys. I'm happy to help out. Yep. You all figure that out. And I've never been displeased with where the money's gone. I've tried to get my children involved with the club. And
what time, Dad?
yeah, that's right. So I've had I think one of my daughters came and helped us stuff backpacks before. Yep. And we looked at trying to do some type of an exchange and get one involved with that. But we have not been able to do so. So we've still got one of our daughters, our typical daughter, she's almost 17. She'll be 17 next week, and I'm sorry, next month. And I'm trying to get her, we've got her that one last year to get her involved with some charity work. I'll be honest, I never thought it would last this long. When I joined, I thought, well, this is just a kind of a business networking club. And then as I got and stayed in there, I made a lot more friends. And I would tell you, you're going to make more friends if you spend more time volunteering. That is, if you just show up at meetings and you have breakfast, you don't get much out of it.
Yeah.
But when you start spending time, go to the social events. So when I first started, it was almost 19 years ago, it really was for business purposes. But then as I stayed, I kept seeing what Rotary does. And I said, you know what, this is more than a network. This is a group of friends, but it's also so powerful in what it does to change the world and local communities. What I would like to see more of in the club is just giving people more the attaboys and the attagirls. I think there's so much that people
praise
do
and recognition,
that you just don't know, and frankly, most of the folks don't want it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if more people knew what was going on, I think we'd know who to call more and say, hey, I got the project. This person's so talented; they've got a passion for that. So I do think praise for folks is important for a couple of reasons. One, it's letting them know that we see it.
Yes.
And then secondly, being able to identify them for future projects. I would tell them that it is a good network of people. You're not going to find a better group of people that you can hitch your wagon to.
Yeah.
They're going to lift you up and help you in your career, but they're also going to help you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I would also tell that young person that you're going to find a lot of the volunteer hours extremely fulfilling, and it just changes your perception from it going from a business network to helping to make the world a better place.
Yep.
But I would also emphasize, though, it really is a good place to do business, and doing business with other Rotarians. I think that's important, especially for bringing new folks in. I mean, sometimes that's a bad word to say, oh, we're talking about the financial side of it, but it's a philanthropic group of business people, and in fact, we vet you to make sure that we don't have too many people in your profession.
Right.
So I don't think that we should ever be afraid of saying, hey, let's bring folks in, but that can't be the sole reason. I mean, so I think it's got to be a balancing act. But I mean, I know that's why I went to my first meeting, and I think we need to recognize that. I planned, and I found that if I get half of that actually was planned to occur, it was a good day. Right now, I have had my 4th shoulder surgery because I'm too dumb to stop.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, 1 was from lacrosse, 3 was from CrossFit. So, but somebody once told me that you're either going to pick an orthopedist or a cardiologist. So I chose the orthopedist. So I've still been going to CrossFit. So my days usually get up at 4:30. I'm at the gym at 5.
Yep.
That keeps me sane.
Yep.
And then get into the office usually between 7:30 or 8:30, and then try to get some stuff done before the day starts coming in on us.
Yeah.
But then I do a lot of night meetings, which is so.
Oh, you do.
That's one of the bad parts about zoning law is you got to go to these night hearings.
That's right. Yeah.
So I tend to have really long days, and I crash on the weekends. But but at the same time, the only time I can ever work out is early in the morning. So I've got to get it in.
Yep.
And frankly, it keeps me sane. So I think that's the regimen is get up, work out, get to the office, knock out what I can, and then if I have evening meetings, which I usually have at least 2 a week, something late, that's where we're at. But yeah, I think your term habitual is a very good term.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've had that thought. So I am 48 now, and I said I would like to finish full-time work between 62, 65. So I've got 15 years, maybe 17 years.
Yep.
So I think it's a matter of building the practice, getting good talent in here to do, because like I said, we do kind of an odd mix of real estate consulting, lobbying, and then practicing law. So I spend about 95% of my time in the political side of it, and then if it goes sideways, we let my partner out of his cage and he goes and litigates all this stuff. But I really enjoy what I do because it's puzzle solving and trying to figure out how to to manage political personalities,
Yeah.
political realities, frankly, and a lot of it's about timing. So just trying to manage that to help, A, let my clients get what they want,
Yeah.
B, provide something the community likes, and C, help elected officials not get their head cut off if they vote for us, right? So that's a balancing act, and I truly love it. But somebody once told me, he said, you don't really want an old doctor, you don't want an old lawyer. So at some point I want to kind of start weaning that off
Yep.
and then bringing up somebody else to take over the practice. I think that's probably more the 10 years we grow and we keep
Running hard. Yep.
running hard.
Yep.
That last 5 years, I think that's when I really start focusing on mentoring and saying, hey, here's somebody who's going to buy the practice, because it really is about relationships. It's really hard to just sell a name and say, oh, yes, the firm. The question is really more is, hey, look, do you know the personalities in this jurisdiction, and can you help us navigate the waters? I have run for political office twice, and what I've learned is A, being a zoning lawyer makes that very difficult. And then two, I'm still stupid enough to really want to do it. I have a passion for politics. I think maybe that's the retirement. Maybe it's like I do well enough at some point, and I say, you know what, now I'm going to put that to the side and go do something with public service. But I've had a passion for that since I was a kid. A lot of what we do is politics, but I still think I'm dumb enough to run for office at some point.
Yeah.
I just don't know quite when.